Happy New Year, PT on Ice. It is Monday, the 1st, 2018. Give it a second and see if anybody joins me this morning bright and early. Not sure if we'll get anybody today on New Year's Day. 2 holidays in a row for me. All right, looks like somebody's rolling in. Good morning, Jason. Good to see you, man. Happy New Year. Ryan on there. All right, so looks like a couple of 2018 folks rolling in. So give me a second and we'll get started. So we should probably start with some announcements, so I make sure I catch it on the recording for anybody who doesn't catch this live. So first and foremost, the announcements are that today is a big day if you are an Ice Physio devotee, if you are a person who is going to try to get on board with any of the continuing ed price bump today. So know that's something that's big and coming down the pike. So if you hear this or watch this later or see this live, know that today's your day. Save a little money. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna hit this starting number here. Gotta get the watch set. All right, so let's roll. So the first thing is apologize for my in the car studio this morning. I have a room or house full of teenagers who decided to make my house the place where the ball dropped last night. So being a nice dad, a kind dad, I decided to let them all sleep and ditch out. So that's my studio this morning. It is bitterly cold in New Jersey, 16 degrees, and so I'm in my cozy car. Watching the sunrise a little bit locally here. So today we're talking about challenges, journey, and hugs of all things. So that's an odd topic for me, especially, but I think that's kind of at the heart of this thing. So I wanted to kind of go into that. So this is kind of a continuation on the Christmas episode. If you were on Christmas morning with me a little bit, or you saw that, you know I talked a little bit about the difference between hedonic happiness or hedonia and eudaimonic happiness or eudaimonia. And so the idea is that tracks way back, all the way back to Aristotle. And I won't go into the details, but just understand that Aristotle was sort of the first person to describe this idea of we get happiness in the sense of joy out of doing things that are of high purpose, right? So things that really speak to our heart, things that we feel are doing good things for society, for our communities, that gives us this high level of happiness. So that's kind of the backdrop for today. And knowing that I had kind of the double holiday shift on Mondays and having the option, quite honestly, to not be on, right? So just so everyone knows, Jeff wasn't like, hey, you got to be on the holidays. In fact, the crew, the faculty was kind of like, skip it. It's the holidays. Take the break. But I just thought it really lended itself to this message, this idea that Christmas morning, regardless of your belief system, is an unbelievable time to do an act of generosity, give a gift, and get a little bit of that high purpose sense of joy. And then the new year, of course, is a perfect day to really plan that all out. So, kind of culturally, societally, we buy into this idea that planning, resolutions, and all that other good stuff. So that's kind of the backdrop. Today is really about, all right, now what do we do with that knowledge? What do we do with the idea that eudaimonic happiness, this idea of joy, is usually what we're lacking, right? So there's not to discount the idea of hedonic happiness. There's something to be said for pleasure. You get that wonderful bite of cake, or you get that wonderful act of pleasure, whatever that is. It is a good thing for our health. It's not an entirely bad thing, but that when you're shifted, when it's an asymmetrical shift to that, we tend to have more despair because we're missing that other side, that side of purpose and joy. And so much has been talked about that lately. But let's get into how that becomes something that we can apply both in the clinic and in our work, and how that can become sort of an important thing that we do in striving for that happiness. So with that being the case, with today being kind of the pinnacle of resolutions and people trying to do the right thing, I thought that all made sense. All right, so that's it. So first and foremost, we got to look at challenges, right? So the whole idea of being in the flow state or that eudaimonic happiness is finding something that pushes us outside of our comfort zone, about challenging ourselves, about getting a little bit past who we are today. Now, that should not come as a surprise to any of us. We all know that there's no growth without loading beyond what we have, right? So if we're a person who has, the desire to make our muscles stronger, if we're a person who has a desire to retrain our brain, right? These these are concepts that are not new to us. These are concepts that we often talk about and are becoming more and more popular. So it shouldn't be surprising to us that the idea is we have to find something that pushes us beyond our comfort zone. So 10 to 30%, we know from the loading literature. Let's pretend that that's what we can handle psychologically as well, that if we push ourselves beyond that by 10%, whatever we've got, that we'll grow. So that's the idea of growth mindset. And if you boil it down, if you read anything of Carol Dweck and her work, mindset being kind of the pinnacle work that she did, her book called Mindset, which I strongly recommend. It talks about the idea of the growth mindset and the concept of, hey, you've got to kind of see the world as challenges that you want to try to improve upon. So that's really, really big. So this idea of a journey, a journey for growth. Now, for me, of course, this year, it starts today. Training starts today, and a big part of that is the literal journey to Albuquerque, right? So by September, that's the big goal. The goal is show up in Albuquerque, fit and ready to go, being a part of the community and being able to engage deeply and fully. So some of you are on today. I know that you're already signed up to go there, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with you. Some of you who haven't maybe signed up yet, I hope you'll consider it. Bottom line is that we're going to be bringing the tribe together with an idea of we're going to be able to really, really dive in. And so that means you've got to be ready for that. You have to be sort of physically ready. You have to be sort of mentally ready. And for what you can take from it and what you'll allow yourself, you have to be spiritually ready, right? This idea that the spirit, your being, your inner self, whatever you want to call that, has to be sort of open and ready, and that there's a preparation phase to do that. That you have to sort of battle this journey and walk forward and find and connect the dots. So for me, what I decided to do was to take this year and make this year, and I know this is going to come to a shock to anybody who knows me, and in a sense, like, my poor family, because they're going to be on this experiment with me. This is going to be the year of hugs for me. That's right. Let me give it a second. Set in. That's right. The year of hugs for Mike Eisenhart. That is my prediction for the future. And what that means, Allie, I see a reaction. What that means is that, when I've looked into the literature, for me, a major challenge, I'm not a hugger, right? Like, I'm not a hugger. I don't like to, like bring it in, like none of that. So that's not my style much at all. I'm sort of like a stiff, handshake, stoic, that guy. But when you really look into it, in all sincerity, in all seriousness, connect is the element that most of us are missing in our life, right? Like true on, deep bonded connection. And what's interesting is that when you dive into literature on hugs and you read a lot about oxytocin, right? So like the new oxy, that's my prediction, right? So I'm going for the new oxy this year. Instead of oxycodone, like the rest of the world, I'm going for oxytocin. And so what that means is that I'm trying to, embrace the idea and challenge myself to really use neurotransmitters and use hormones to their benefit. And I think that is the prediction for 2018. The prediction for 2018 is that if we're going to turn the tide, right? If we're going to actually make a move on some of the things that, really are beating us as a population, the things that are sort of beating us down, we're going to have to start with true connect. Now, what's interesting is if you get into literature there a little bit, you'll find that a lot of kind of the stuff that they say about oxytocin, it's the love chemical and it's, the bonding chemical. It's got a double-edged sword. What's interesting is that it actually turns on a lot of that for the people in your tribe, but it also tends to distance you from other people who aren't in your tribe. And so there's a double-edged sword that you have to be careful with it. And so I'm going to try to practice that habit, of really connecting with the people in my life that I care about. So what does that mean? What does that mean for you? Don't worry, I'm not going to like walk around conferences assaulting people with hugs. That's a little bit beyond even my level of craziness. But it wouldn't surprise me that if you are part of my tribe and you're in that kind of connection phase, that I will actually do my best. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to need support. Right? This is a social support thing. I'm asking for help on New Year's Day because this is about as awkward for me as things get. But I think it's that important. So we're going to connect. That's my concept, and I'm asking as many other people to do that as well, starting in our profession, right? So this is 2018 will be the year of the hug, and I see some stuff in there about hanging out with Dustin. So maybe that's it. Maybe he's officially rubbed off on me now. And congrats to them. I saw something about that their course just sold out. So that's really where I want to go. I want to go with the idea of, that idea of the new Oxy, get outside of your comfort zone. And I want to try to spread that a little bit within our profession, within our tribes, within our families, because I really, really believe that when you look at the literature on happiness, it starts with connect. And then we go to move, fuel, recover, endure, right? And then we go to connect again, okay? We start with connect. And I think that's the part that we're missing, that when we look at eudaimonic happiness, when we look at our despair as a society, and that's really what it is, okay? We have despair. We're coming to terms with the fact that we are in not a great spot in many different places, and people are grieving. I mean, that's what it is. They're grieving. They're looking for an outlet. They're trying to find other things, and it's killing people at a rate that is totally unacceptable. And so, I feel like we got to put our money where our mouth is. And if the money, if our money is in a place where we say, yeah, listen, touch, and I'm not a manual therapist. I mean, people know me, like I'm not much of a manual therapist, but what we know about touch is that it changes, that there is a neurophysiological effect, the brain begins to change. So we need to start that at a more global level, right? We can't wait for it to be when someone's in pain already and in our clinic. We have to just be able to look people in the eye and say, hey, you know what, like, I feel like you need a hug. Now, I have done this in the past a little bit, and it has been for very much mixed reviews. I can tell you a quick story. I was in a very blue-collar scenario, and I had this guy who was just needling me, right? He was just like all over me about like, oh, this health stuff is stupid. And he's kind of like the toughest guy in the room, and everybody knows it, and he's a pretty tough dude, okay? And it took everything I had, and I finally said to him, hey man, do you need a hug, in front of the rest of the room? And of course, a bunch of blue-collar guys, they started like laughing and started making fun of him. And of course, he threatened my life for a minute there. He said, I might kill you in the parking lot, like that. But at the end, he and I truly had a connection. And within about a year, he and I were actually really good buds. We got to be very, very close, and he made some very big changes in health. I was scared to death. I'm not going to lie. I was scared to death. This is a big dude, scary dude, who may have killed people, for all I know. I mean, he certainly had that look about him. But on the inside, right, beyond that, if you can get beyond the shell, we're all the same. And that's kind of the message from last week, is that we're more alike than we are different. And when we approach the world that way, when we're willing to allow ourselves to say, listen, like, peel back a couple of layers and you and I are the exact same. So let's begin to start to sort of break those, those barriers. And so I'm kind of pledging, out loud, because that's what they say. If you want to change a habit, if you believe in New Year's resolutions, which I generally don't, but if you believe in New Year's resolutions, you know that if you say it socially out loud in front of your own tribe, you're much more likely to follow through with it. So there it is. I'm going to start with my kids, okay? Because even though that should be an easy group, they're a lot like me. At least my oldest for sure. She's a lot like me. She doesn't like to be, thanks anyway, but that's it. Today, bring it in. We're having a big hug. All right, why? Because we want that neurotransmitter release. We want some dopamine, some serotonin. And I think we have that. Most of the time it comes out of our hands. And I guess today what I'm challenging the group to say is maybe today we can get it to come out of our heart. We can move forward a little bit and bring it, not just out of our hands, out of our mouths, but from the heart and begin to make some changes. So that's where I want to go. I have 2 minutes and 55 seconds left. I guess I'm probably going to leave it a little short today, which again is rare. So maybe all sorts of crazy changes happened in 2018. But to recap, I think that's the most important thing. I think that we can be the ones who start this whole idea of, hey, it's time for a new Oxy. This one happens to be oxytocin. Okay. It's not ingested orally. I mean, although I've heard you can spray it in your nose. It's the hug drug, right? It's the one that comes out and says, yeah, let's connect with people. Let's start actually beginning to connect with people. And let's start building our tribe in a way that lets other people know that we genuinely care about them as people. That as people, they are what matters first. And that we can boil all the other stuff down. We can do reductionism, and we can get down to the little details when we need to. But that we don't always need to. That sometimes it's just fine to stay at the high level and let's speak principles and globally, and let's make sure everybody knows that, look, when you're cared about and when you care for yourselves and you care for your community, everybody wins. All boats do rise. All right, it is Monday. It is only Monday. It is a new year, a new week, a new year, 2018. Let's attack it. Make it count.